Joshua chapter 18 and 19. We're continuing on in our story where we're learning about the taking of the promised land, the division of the land, how the different tribes received different portions from the Lord. We're going to pick up where we left off. Chapter 18, verse 1, the whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh and set up to tent a meeting there. So the people of Israel, the assembly of Israel, the leadership of Israel is all gathering together. The tribes are coming together. And it says the country was brought under their control, but there were still 7 Israelite tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. So as we've learned along the way, some of the tribes chose to stay on one side of the Jordan. It was really 2.5. It was 2 tribes and a half tribe. And then we had other tribes that had already received their allotment on the other side of the Jordan. There's still 7 tribes left that have land to take. We'll learn in chapter 19 about their allotment. But it says in verse 3, here's the verse I want to harp on, if you will, for me and you today. Joshua said to the Israelites, Joshua, who is a picture of Christ, this is the question he poses to Israel, the people of God. So picture in your mind Jesus posing this question to you because you're a child of God. How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you? He poses this interesting question because God had promised a portion to them. God had promised an inheritance to them. God had something for them in their future. God has something for me and you in our future. And Joshua challenges the people. He's seeking to motivate and to encourage them by challenging them. What are you waiting for? God has promised this. What is holding you back? And here's the question I would have us to ask ourselves in our own life. Is there something that God has spoken to us, whispered to us, promised to us that requires us to move? But we, rather than moving, we've been sitting back waiting. Because sometimes there's things in your life that it'll drop right into your lap. He'll place it right in your hands. But sometimes he'll tell you, go take that mountain, but you have to move by faith and go take that mountain. Verse 4, he says to them, appoint 3 men from each tribe. I will send them out to make a survey of the land and write a description of it, according to the inheritance of each. Then they will return to me. You are to divide the land into 7 parts. Judah is to remain in its territory in the south, and the tribes of Joseph in their territory on the north. After you have written descriptions of the 7 parts of the land, bring them here to me, and I will cast lots for you in the presence of the Lord our God. He says basically, I want you to go make a plan. I want you to go look at everything that God has promised you. I want you to map it out, and then we're going to make a strategy on how we're going to take it, how we're going to divide it, and then we're going to come before the Lord, and the Lord's going to determine who will get what portion, who will run this route in the play, if you will, for a sport analogy. Verse 7, the Levites, however, do not get a portion among you, because the priestly service of the Lord is their inheritance. The Lord is their portion. And Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan. Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave it to them. As the men started on their way to map out the land, Joshua instructed them, go and make a survey of the land and write a description of it. Then return to me, and I will cast lots for you here at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord. So the men left and went through the land. They wrote its description down on a scroll, town by town, in 7 parts, and returned to Joshua in the camp at Shiloh. Joshua then cast lots for them in the Lord in the presence of the Lord, and there he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their tribal divisions. So we're going to go through multiple allotments with a lot of cities and a lot of big words. We're going to read through it, and it'll take us all the way through the end of chapter 19. Here we go, deep breath. Whew. The first lot was for Benjamin, and the first lot came up for the tribe of Benjamin according to its clans. Their allotted territory lay between the tribes of Judah and Joseph. On the north side, their boundaries began at the Jordan, past the northern slope of Jericho, and headed west into the hill country, coming out of the wilderness of Beth-aven. From there, it crossed to the south slope of Luz, that is Bethel, it might say in your margin, and went down to Ataroth Adar on the hill south of lower Beth-horon. From the hill facing Beth-horon on the south, the boundary turned south along the western side and came out at Kiriath Baal. Your margin might say that is Kiriath Jearim, a town of the people of Judah. This was the western side. The southern side began at the outskirts of Kiriath Jearim on the west, and the boundary came out at the spring of the waters of Naphtali. The boundary went down to the foot of the hill facing the valley of Ben Hinnom, north of the valley of Rephaim. It continued down the Hinnom Valley along the southern slope of the Jebusite city, and so to En-Rogel. It then curved north, went to En-Shemesh, continued to Geliloth, which faces the pass of Adummim, and ran down to the stone of Bohan and son of Reuben. It continued to the northern slope of Beth Rabbah and down into the Arabah. It then went to the northern slope of Beth Hoglah and came out at the northern bay of the Dead Sea, at the mouth of the Jordan in the south. This was the southern boundary. The Jordan formed the boundary on the eastern side. These were the boundaries that marked out the inheritance of the clans of Benjamin on all sides. The tribe of Benjamin, according to its clans, had the following towns: Jericho, which we've learned about. This was really a significant city where God had the walls fall down, where God went before the children of Israel. One of the greatest battles that they would face, God would fight for them. Jericho, Beth Hoglah, Emet Kaziz, Beth Rabbah, Zemaraim, Bethel, Avim, Parah, Oprah, Kephar, Amani, Ophni, and Geba, 12 towns and their villages. Gibeon, Ramah, Berath, Mizpah, Kephirah, Moza, Rechem, Irpel, Tarala, Zelah, Heleph, the Jebusite city that is Jerusalem. Gibeah and Kiriath, 14 towns and their villages. This was the inheritance of Benjamin for its clans. So it listed out everything that Benjamin was allotted, the portion that Benjamin had. And then we jump into chapter 19, and we will cover many more allotments. Another deep breath. The allotment for Simeon. The second lot came out for the tribe of Simeon according to its clans. Their inheritance lay within the territory of Judah. So Judah had more land than it needed, and a portion of what was Judah was carved out for Simeon. The second lot came out of this tribe. It says their inheritance lay within the territory of Judah. It included Beersheba, Molada, Hazar Shual, Bala, Ezem, Eltolad, Bethul, Harmor, Ziklag. You may remember Ziklag. This was a town that David had a tough time at, where his family was taken hostage and his things were taken, where he had one of the worst days of his life, and the Lord sent him to pursue. Beth Makabath, Hazar Susa, Beth Lebeth, and Sharuchin, 13 towns and their villages. Ain, Rimmon, Ether, and Ashen, 4 towns and their villages, and all the villages around these towns as far as Baalath Beer, which in your margin it might say Ramah in the Negev. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the Simeonites according to its clans. The inheritance of the Simeonites was taken from the share of Judah, because Judah's portion was more than they needed. So the Simeonites received their inheritance within the territory of Judah. Now we move on to Zebulon. The third lot came up for Zebulon according to its clans. The boundary of their inheritance went as far as Sarid. Going west, it ran to Maralah, touched Dabasheth, and extended to the ravine near Jokneam. It turned east from Sarid toward the sunrise to the territory of Kisloth Tabor and went on to Dabaroth and up to Japhia. Then it continued eastward towards Gath Hefer and Eth Kazin. It came out at Rimmon and turned toward Nea. There the boundary went around on the north to Hanathon and ended at the valley of Ifta El. Included there were Katath, Naphalal, Shimron, Adalah, and Bethlehem, which you probably have heard of that town. There were 12 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of Zebulon according to its clans. Allotment for Issachar. The fourth lot came out for Issachar according to its clans. Their territory included Jezreel, Kesuloth, Shunem, Hapharam, Shion, Anaharath, Rabith, Kishion, Ebez, Remeth, and Genem, and Hada, and Beth Bazez. The boundary touched Tabor, Shahazuma, and Beth Shemesh, and ended at the Jordan. There were 16 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Issachar according to its clans. Now we move to the fifth lot. This is for Asher. The fifth lot came out for the tribe of Asher according to its clans. Their territory included Helkath, Hali, Beten, Akshveth, Alamelech, Amad, and Mishal. On the west, the boundary touched Carmel and Shihor Libnath. It then turned eastward towards Beth Dagon, touched Zebulon in the valley of Ifta El, and went north to Beth Emek and Neo, passing Kabul on the left. It went to Abdon, Rehab, Haman, and Kana as far as Greater Sidon. The boundary then turned back toward Ramah and went to the fortified city of Tyre, turned toward Hosa, and came out of the Mediterranean Sea in the region of Akzib, Uma, Ephek, and Rehab. There were 22 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Asher according to its clans. We have 3 more allotments left. The sixth was for Naphtali according to its clans. Their boundary went from Heleph and the large tree and Zananim, passing Adami Nekeb and Jabneel to Lukum, and ending at the Jordan. The boundary ran west through Asnath Tabor and came out at Hakuk. It touched Zebulon on the south, Asher on the west, and the Jordan on the east. The fortified towns were Ziddim, Zur, Hamath, Rakath, Kinnereth, Adamah, Ramah, Hazor, Kadesh, Edrei, and Hazor, Iron, Migdalel, Horem, Bethanath, and Beth Shemesh. There were 19 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Naphtali according to its clans. This is the last clan, and then we'll finish with Joshua. The seventh lot came out for the tribe of Dan according to its clans. The territory of the inheritance included Zorah, Eshtaol, Irshemesh, Shalabin, Aijalon, Ithla, Elan, Timnah, Ekron, Eltekah, Gibbethon, Beleth, Jehud, Ben-Barak, Geth-Ramon, Mejargon, and Rakan, with the area facing Joppa. When the territory of the Danites was lost, then they went up and attacked Leshem, took it, put to the sword, and occupied it. They settled in Leshem and named it Dan, after their ancestor. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Dan according to its clans. When they had finished dividing the land in its allotted portions, the Israelites gave Joshua, son of Nun, an inheritance among them. The one who had led them, the one who had gone before them and helped them, they gave him basically a reward or a portion of what God had given them, as the Lord had commanded, verse 50. They gave him the town he asked for, Timnath Sarah, in the hill country of Ephraim. And he built up the town, and he settled there. These are the territories that Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel assigned by lot at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord and the entrance to the tent of meeting. And so they finished dividing the land. Everyone had their portion. Everyone was settled. And we're going to learn in the next few chapters how the Lord would give them rest. My prayer for you and for me is that the Lord would give us rest, and we would rest in what God has provided for us. That if there's things in our life that God has shared with us or declared over us that we haven't stepped out by faith to take, that God would encourage you, that God would motivate you to move forward by faith. But at the same time, if there's things that God has allotted into your life, a portion that God has given you, I would challenge and encourage you to be content with the portion that God has given to you, to trust Him, to rest in Him, and to know that you're blessed. Be blessed today.